Hi, this is Joseph Arthur. Thanks for checking out Come to Where I'm From. Please support us on Patreon, patreon.com/come to where I'm from. We are an independent podcast, and any contributions you can make are greatly appreciated.
Yeah.
All right, here we are, Danny Clinch.
All right.
How you doing?
Well, we have about 35,000 people that are about to walk out into the beach in Asbury Park here.
35,000 people to see Sea.Hear.Now.
I have some friends at Sea.Hear.Now.
And did you start this festival?
Myself and Tim Donnelly brainstormed on it.
Yeah.
We came up with like a little one sheet, as they say, and started showing it around to people. He came up with the idea of Sea.Hear.Now title to do these little surf art music festivals. So we had took over a little building in one of the empty spots on the boardwalk where there are no empty spots now.
Right.
And started to create these little art gallery shows with musicians, surfers making art, musicians making art, and all that. And so that was kind of our idea, and we started to riff on that and started to show around this one sheet that we had, showing our idea. You know what it is we want to do. We want to have surfers who play music, musicians who surf, musicians who make art, even surfers who make art. And we brought it around to a lot of people, and there was a lot of folks who weren't ready. They were working on other festivals. We kept trying to get it going, and we ran into Tim Sweetwood, who works for C3 and who started
What's C3?
C3 is the Three Charlies out of Austin. They're festival organizers and promoters.
The Three Charlies.
The Three Charlies. It is. It's Charles. It's Al.
Sounds like a Quentin
Charlie
Tarantino
Jones.
chapter.
Charlie's Angels.
Yeah.
And Charlie Walker. So anyway, he was the one guy that said to us, he was like, "Hey man, I'll come down and check out
The scene.
Asbury Park. Let's see,
Yeah.
And we go out and we stand on the boardwalk there, and you see the convention hall, the old architecture from the 20s. We tell them about how at convention hall, really all the great bands have played at convention hall, except for the Beatles and somebody else. Timmy told me, but like the Stones. Led Zeppelin played there instead of going to Woodstock.
Huey Lewis in the news.
Huey Lewis. Joseph Arthur has played there.
The Who were there, right?
The Who, absolutely. The Doors, Janis Joplin, all that stuff.
Awesome.
Yeah, all the great bands. And so anyway, he stood there and he looked around and he was like, "Wow, I can see it,"
Yeah.
And having had now put my myself down here in this gallery, the Transparent Galley.
Which has been going on for how many years now?
About 3 years.
Yeah, it's incredible.
You've been along for the ride.
I love it.
Yeah,
I'm so happy it's still going.
Yeah. I remember calling you and just saying hey, we're having a little jam down here. Why don't you come and hang? And sure enough, an hour or two later, he rolled up.
Yeah.
And we threw it down. And I have to say, as I was telling you yesterday when we were on the phone, how much the art that you make, as well as the music that you make, was a big inspiration in the idea for the pop-up gallery on site, which is getting
awesome.
the musicians who make art to come and represent.
Well, that's cool. I'm glad I'm here this year.
Yeah.
Because this is the second year,
It's the second year. And you were on Arthur Buck last year. We tried to get you in there.
Yeah.
And then as this year was coming together, I saw that Mike was doing this thing, which I know he was inspired by you as well.
Yeah, McCready.
When you were at Pearl Jam 20, he saw you painting on stage.
Painting live.
And so I hit him up, and I was like, "Hey man, this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
I see you and Kate are doing this incredible infinite color and sound thing." And I said, "What's up? You want to come out?"
Yeah.
And he was like, "Yeah, this is great." Well, he came when we got here yesterday, we walked up and down the beach, and Mike's been getting into, I think it's funny with Springsteen, it's like people are like, it's a love-hate relationship, or it's like they never got it, they never liked it, they heard Born in the USA, and they're of a certain age where they just I'm not into Born in the USA, whatever. And then there's a moment where there's like a transition where they heard Nebraska, and then they were like, oh my God, and then they hear like the Wild, the Innocent, and the East Street Shuffle, and it's such an adventurous record.
And then they re-listen to Born in the USA,
and they're like, oh, well, all right. Yeah, exactly. So Mike was, I think Mike had one of those epiphanies, and so for him to come here, he's never been to Asbury Park.
That's wild.
Pearl Jam didn't play the Pony.
Yeah.
Like, they never came through. You know, Blind Melon, who's playing today, they all came through the Stone Pony. They did the Trade Winds, you know, places like that. But you know, they just
Rogers
never
is
came
gonna
through.
do the pod.
So, oh yeah,
Yeah, he's gonna do it.
He's incredible.
Yeah.
He's a great conversation.
I was trying to tell Ehud he's gonna be a good guest.
He is.
Yeah,
he
he's
is.
funny.
That's good. Yeah.
But so this is a second year, and it feels like it's blown up.
You know,
I was looking at the poster. I was like, "Damn, yeah, this is like this is like Coachella type of shit." No, but
even year one,
Coachella.
you got Brandy Carlisle. You managed to snag really big names right out the bat.
You know what? Part of thing Tim Sweetwood, who puts on Shaky Knees and Shaky Beats and Shaky Boots and all this, created a brand out of Atlanta and now develops festivals for C3. He's got relationships. You know, and I have relationships.
Yeah.
And Tim Donnelly has relationships. And H.M. Woolman, our other partner. We all have these relationships, and we all are in the music industry, and we kind of appreciate curating something interesting for this, you know, this area.
Yeah.
So we got our new bands, you know, local bands, like this year Low Light and Brick and Mortar, and last year we had Tangier's Blues Band, and we had Nicole Atkins, we had I'm spacing out, but anyway, but then we have then we have new artists. This year we have like Marcus King, who's on the come up. We have Jade Bird. When last year I did the video for Brandy Carlisle's The Joke, and while we were doing it, we were putting together this lineup. And I said, hey, you know, we're doing this thing in Asbury. We'd love to have you. And she had not quite blown up. Like she was right on the edge, about to dive off, you know, and it really, she said yes. And then by the time she showed, she had just put out another great record, and she was just like kind of crushing it, and she just fits the demographic here so well.
Yeah.
And we just had a blast, and she had me sit in on some harmonica, which was awesome. And but then we got Brandy Carlisle. We have you know, a legacy act. You know, we have a reggae act. You know, last year we had the Wailers. We have Steel Pulse. Excuse me, we have Steel Pulse this year, and then we have like Joan Jett, the B-52s. We had Blondie last year.
I'm psyched about Joan Jett.
I mean, you know.
So when you say the demographic, what do you mean by that?
I think it's really our own sort of in our own mind demographic, but it's like people of Asbury Park, of the Jersey Shore, of the tri-state area. Philadelphia is an amazing music town.
Yeah.
You know, Asbury Park has always been. You got New York City here, you got Atlantic City there. You know, everything is sort of like in this little bubble. And when I say, you know, our demographic, I mean even surfing and art people. You know,
yeah, and
music,
people
you know,
of this area.
Yeah,
too.
yeah. So we have we think about families who come in the morning with their kids and stroll around, and you can come in and out of the festival. So you can come in with the kids in the morning, go see something, show them the beach and you know, stuff that they may not ever remember, but they can say that they were there and they saw Joan Jett.
Hand off one of your passes so you can bring in another friend. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
We'll get you in, Joseph. Don't worry. So, but anyway, they can bring the kids home to grandparents. They can then come back. You can swap out your passes.
Don't do that.
My partners will be so stoked to hear that.
And
snip, snip. And you can go visit the other businesses too. I mean, so that's a win for everybody.
Yeah.
Right. So
what do you like? What do you like?
We also consider the gay and lesbian community here, and we consider the 60-year-old plus people who like to come here and see. You know, they grew up, you know, listening to Joan Jett, the B-52s, whatever, and then of course we have Jersey people, you know, and great headliners, Lumineers.
Yeah.
You know, the guys are from Jersey.
Right.
Great band, and Dave Matthews Band, and like, just to have that in itself is that great anchor, and it allows us to do whatever we want below, you know, to experiment. You know, like I said, it's just such a joy, and it's a joy to like turn on. You know, we're embedded in the music industry, right? You and we listen to new stuff all the time. We're in New York City. We see the Black Pumas over here, and we see Marcus King over there, and we see Jade Bird. A lot of these people don't see those people, right? So we get to turn people on to some great music.
Yeah.
And you know, they come away going like, wow, like Jade Bird. Holy cow! I mean, if you see her live show, people are gonna be talking about Jade Bird after this. I know they will, and certainly Marcus King. I mean, he's just, he's all that.
Right on.
And then that infinite color and sound, and
some wild stuff.
Joseph Arthur, like asses and elbows everywhere.
Oh yeah,
see it.
With me, it's asses and elbows all the time.
That's what I said. That's why I said it.
But so talk about what I want to get at is your sort of championship of this area, Asbury Park, and just like how that is seems to be a passion for you, and like what do you think about that? How could you speak on that? What's your motivation there? Or what fills your soul about this place and about presenting this place and
Yeah.
What I'm trying to get at?
Yeah. I'm from the Jersey Shore, right?
Right.
I grew up here. As a teenager, my wife and I would come here and go see bands at the Stone Pony. I was always hoping to see Bruce Springsteen, but I never did. But we saw like so many great shows there. We saw the Stray Cats there. We saw, Cyndi Lauper back in the day. We saw Warren Zevon and Greg Allman Band, and just on and on. And then all these other bands that like Southside Johnny and like John Eddie and like bands like that, where like maybe Bruce would show up or something, And of course I was bringing my camera all the time, and so I grew up in this area and was always coming here, and I love the shore. I'm always going to live near the ocean, and of course I'm a big music fan, and Asbury Park has this history of music, and I think wanting to, create something like a legacy thing for myself and my partners, Tim Donnelly and HM and Tim, and just sort of, we felt like there was an opportunity. And it's funny how the timing is always a thing, and how you think you want to do it and it never happens, and then all of a sudden it happens, and for some reason you're like, the timing is perfect. We couldn't have done this 5 years ago in Asbury. It just might have just been the wrong time. It wouldn't have get any teeth, and it wouldn't have like got in. But like the infrastructure of Asbury, iStar was here, Madison Marquette.
This being here, I think has led the way, and then the Asbury Lanes reopening, right?
Yeah. Totally. And the fact, as you say, is like per square footage or per square mile. Apparently somebody's told me that this has as much, if not more, music venues than like Nashville or or Austin or whatever. It's like we have a music venue every couple of feet here. It's incredible, and that's exciting. And this pop-up, the Transparent Gallery, was like it really was happenstance. Like this room was empty, and they were going to use it for something else.
Right.
And whatever was supposed to go in here got delayed, and they came to me. I ran into this woman, and she was working for iStar, and she said, hey, they want to fill up that space. You want to do a pop-up gallery? We've got a couple of months. You can throw it up. And at the same time, Tina Karekis, who runs the gallery here.
Best dressed woman ever.
Best dressed woman in Asbury Park.
Yeah.
And
probably in New York City.
Probably in the tri-state area.
Yeah.
And she was running a gallery, sort of like selling mid-century modern furniture and like art and whatnot on the boardwalk. And her lease came up because they were redoing the building. And I said, Tina, and I really wasn't really that interested in doing a gallery show because I've done so many, doing gallery shows. It's like a ton of work, and then
pain
it's
in the ass.
What's the payoff?
Especially when you can sell stuff on Instagram.
Yeah, exactly. Now we know that. We know that, right?
What's the point?
How big's your store, Joseph? It's about the size of
It's about the size of my phone.
So anyway, it was a perfect storm. Tina was looking for a space. She bought her stuff, and I said, I agree to do it. And they're great partners. I said, I'll agree to do it. I want a backline. I would like to have, help me, print up all this stuff, frame it. We wanted to do these vinyls
Window
up there. And
things.
they did partner us up with Barron and Barron, which is a creative agency out of New York City. And we all just, kind of collaborated, and we built this space
Barron
up.
and Barron, is that related to the Red Baron?
It is. It's actually
is that
Snoopy.
His brother?
Yeah. It's Spike. Spike runs it.
So I got this thing that keeps popping in my head, the sort of celebration of an American ideal. And phrase is coming up when I'm like looking at that picture right behind you. Is that's Neil Young, right?
Yeah.
In the car.
Yeah.
And I feel like Bruce has that celebration of this American ideal, and I feel like you embody that as well. You know.
Yeah.
And I don't know, where do you think you do you know what I mean when I say
Yeah,
that?
I do. And in a way, at least the way I read it is like, you know what? I think everybody gets there obviously a different way. You know, if you've seen Bruce on Broadway, or if you read his book, or you know anything about him, it's like he grew up and like had a contentious relationship with his father, and it was tough and all that sort of stuff. For me, it was a bit of the opposite. It's like my family was like very, very accepting of everybody. My dad was a house painter. My mom was a housewife. They worked hard. My dad worked really hard. We never felt like we were for want of anything. And yet my dad was like working 3 jobs, you know. I never knew it. I mean, I saw it, and I knew he was working hard. But, you know, my parents took in all the black sheep of our family who got kicked out of their house. They would end up living at our house. I had 3 foster sisters, you know, and it was like the idea
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's the first I think I've heard that you had 3 foster sisters.
That's true.
I
probably
didn't know
haven't
that.
said that, yeah.
That's wild.
Yep. And till this day, you know, one of them has passed away, but the 2 others keep in touch with my mom all the time. My dad passed away a couple of years ago.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah. But, you know, they were just, they were people. They loved people. I always tell this story about my dad. It's like, you know, you need to go to a wedding, or you're like at some event or something, and there's like this one really weird dude that everybody's kind of avoiding. And they're just like, yeah, that guy's
That's
a
usually
little
me.
weird. It's usually you. So you and my dad would get along great, because my dad would gravitate towards those people.
Right.
He would like saddle up next to them, and next thing you know, my dad's like, you know.
That's the black sheep,
He
taking in the black sheep.
Yeah.
Like,
He just wanted to hang out with the weirdos, you know.
Right.
And just get a good story. He's like, why are you going to talk to some boring other character when you can get into the real stuff with
somebody
some
who's like like a hero for the ones that are bullied. Sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, totally.
Like,
I mean, they look at, you know, and my mom is like, you know, has worked at the local soup kitchen in town for 30 years. Every week. Yeah. You know, she's there. And so, I don't know, I just, that American ideal of like, you know, you don't have, it's almost like the American dream isn't, you know, owning a jet and a mansion.
No.
You know, like the American dream is like,
it's the radio on that car.
It's right there.
That's the American ideal.
The American dream is cruising through Nashville with Neil Young in an old Cadillac.
Even though he's he's a Canadian. Yeah, but come on, it's Neil Young, all right?
It's Neil. He's
you know,
he's a world.
He's a world.
Yeah,
he might as well.
Yeah.
He is the American
He's a world
ideal.
citizen. Yeah.
Total citizen of the world.
So,
But because your work exudes, I don't know, a sort of idealism, I would say, almost like, you know, I don't know, and a reality, but also it's not like it's unreal, but it's also, I don't know, you're finding, I don't know.
I think there's just the honesty to my work. Like,
right.
I feel like I'm a documentary photographer, you know, and I did come up through art. And so I kind of love to combine art and the document, you know, like, so sometimes I have a very, you know, like a document of somebody, but like another time I might have a plastic camera and shoot, you know, multiple exposure, weird stuff, you know. It's like, and I love that kind of it. Sometimes I'll put someone's guitar in front of their face if they paint on it.
Oh, right.
And,
we did one like that. Yeah, you could put, the amp or the guitar, and the guitar.
Exactly.
Yeah. Recently you posted the Bruce Springsteen cover you shot for The Rising.
Yeah.
And it was interesting.
Well, there's a great example of an artful moment.
Right, and it was interesting because I like saw that, and then I read your caption, and I was just like, oh, holy shit, that is The Rise. Like, I had to go Google The Rising. I was like, that's the cover? Because of the font on that makes up a lot of the thing, too, like, or somehow frames it differently. Yeah. But I didn't notice the image of Bruce, of the blurriness when I first saw that cover until you reposted it with just the photo.
Yeah.
How'd that photo happen?
Well, it was my first shoot with him. Like, or it wasn't. I had done, when the E Street Band got back together in 1999, I had sent my book Discovery In to Bruce and to his art director at the time, and he saw it and told her, like, see if Danny wants to come down to Fort Monmouth and take some photos. So I was like, oh my God, are you kidding me? And literally with tears in my eyes, I drove down from New York City to Fort Monmouth, like listening to Springsteen. Like,
what were you listening to?
The wind was blowing
All
the
of it?
tears. I mean, probably Greetings from Asbury Park. Like, I just
that might be my favorate one, man.
Yeah,
the
just
first
went
album.
there.
I
Yeah.
fucking love that album. I really do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, it was such a great moment for me. But then, so then we sort of, I think he liked my style of like just staying out of the way and documenting. And I got to do portraits of all the band members and stuff. And then, funny enough, like he was making the next record, and this is after September 11th, and I get a call from the management like, hey, we go down. Bruce is finishing up this record at Southern Tracks with Brendan O'Brien, so go down and like get some photos. And like they didn't even really say like they were going to give me the album. I don't remember being told anything, but like just go down and get what you can.
They probably didn't know.
Yeah.
Maybe we're probably going to see what they
Right.
got.
So I go down there and I hang out for a couple of days, and I just was like, I'm relentlessly, you know, capturing what I can, and then very respectfully saying, hey, Bruce, if you got like a couple minutes, like, could we do this? And could we, you know, go over here? And then we ended up like booking an afternoon to go around Atlanta. And one of the guys that worked there took us to this rooftop of this building. It was like an old building, like 20s architecture, almost like what's around here in Asbury.
What neighborhood do you remember?
No.
I used to live in Atlanta.
Yeah.
Shout out Atlanta.
Yeah. And so the guy who took us around was in a famous band from Atlanta, and I just can't remember his
Driving
name.
and Crying?
No, it wasn't Driving and Crying.
Georgia Satellites?
No.
Oh, well.
No, it was like more of an obscure sort of. It wasn't a famous band. It was an obscure, but it was
Follow for Now.
REM. I never heard of
5'8".
them. No. So anyway, he took us up there, and then one of the things I was doing was like getting portraits and getting stuff that would work for publicity, and then I was just trying to take some chances. So I put my camera on a tripod, and I just asked him to move around a little bit, and I did like a long exposure on my camera, which allows the subject to blur
Right.
as it's clicking the shutters, you know.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it was one of a bunch that we took, and you know, we came back, and then like I said, I saw the image, and I was like, wow, what a bold, you know, image, like to choose. Like I just didn't think that was what he was going to choose.
I know. It is a wild choice.
Yeah.
Like,
and then like I said, when you listen to the music and you listen to all the tunes on that record that are talking about people who lost loved ones and who are now ghosts and who are now like, you know, in their head, or they've disappeared, or, you know, empty sky. Like, I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah.
And there's also a really dope little book they made as a you know, limited edition, like rising package that's really cool. It's got hundreds of photos in it, and I was like, holy cow, not only do I have the cover, but like I have a whole book of photos of Springsteen that they put out. And the funny thing is my wife isn't, you know, Maria isn't usually easily impressed, and this is like, you know, I've been photographing for quite a while at that point.
Yeah.
And she was like, okay, I'm impressed. You got a Bruce Springsteen album cover. I was like, all right,
She
thanks,
was like,
honey.
okay, I'm impressed. That's funny as hell.
But you know, as my relationship with Bruce has grown, you know, I tend to understand what he responds to well, and he does often respond to like a lot of the weird shit, like you know, double exposures and like plastic camera stuff. And I did all this stuff for Western Stars except for the cover.
Right.
I did all the portraits and all the, like, you know, the landscape stuff, and they rolled it out with these really cool photographs I took with a really cheap plastic camera of like cactus and, you know, the vegetation in the desert landscapes, and double exposure of a horse against like this crazy mountain range and stuff. So
that's wild.
Cool. He chases that stuff, and I appreciate it. And you know, few people, you know, except for maybe super fans, know that he photographs, and he takes really soulful photographs.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Does he post them?
Not usually.
Not usually.
Not usually. But when I did this photo over here at we went to Sandy Hook, New Jersey, on the shore. It's like the
one where he's holding the guitar.
No, the one where he's
with the sailor jacket.
You know, he's got the pea coat, and he's like standing on the beach, and while I was photographing him, he grabbed his camera and like took a couple of photos of me and stuff. And around Christmas time, I get a package in the mail, like from the Springsteens, and I like pop open the box, and like there's a photograph of me that he had taken, and it was cool. That's like I got my Leica and I got my Widelux, and I'm like, there's like a little moment there. And I was like, yeah, all right, wait till I just told him, I said, listen, when I make my record,
that's the cover.
I'm gonna need some photos.
Yeah. Well, yeah, your aesthetic, I guess, is like, the word aesthetic is kind of like, I don't know, a little, but it's like
aesthetic, and it's like, what's that other one that I love? What's that word, Josh, that everybody uses for like describing
to sound smart.
Yeah, it's like
your aesthetic.
I'm not smarter. I could remember.
But your aesthetic and I don't know. It's like it's perfect for him, in my opinion. Right. Like it's like there's a match made in heaven.
Yeah.
Vibe going on there.
Yeah. I think, actually, I mean, I'm from right around the corner. My dad grew up in the next town over. And in fact, right over here on 4th and Kingsley, I have a photo of my dad and Bruce in Patty's Hudson. And they said, oh, Max, you got to drive this Hudson, because my dad had one when he was a kid. Mm-hmm. And my dad was like, oh, I don't want to drive the car.
That photo's in the book, right?
It's in the book, yeah. And so he grabs, Bruce grabs the keys and puts them in my dad's hands. He's like, Max, you can't kill this car. We're going to drive this car. So they hopped in and they rode around Asbury Park for a little bit. Just Bruce and my dad. I didn't even get in the car at that point. They drove away. I was like, yo, wait, right?
Yeah.
So they're shooting the shit, rolling around Asbury Park. And they were talking about the carousel and how they both used to get the gold ring, and they would keep it and give it to their girlfriends instead of like trading it in for like a stuffed bear. Mm-hmm. And they talked about where they shop for clothes. Everybody of that stature, blue collar people shopped at the one place for school clothes. They both went to the same place.
Right.
And then they come back and they pull up here, and my dad goes, man, this is great. I was driving around Asbury Park. Everybody was waving to me.
I was like, that's hysterical.
Was your dad fazed by him or not at all?
My dad had, and I learned this from him also, look, you're riding around with Bruce Springsteen. I'm sure there's a little bit, but my dad always said, I'm fine talking to the garbage man, and I'd be fine talking to the president.
Hero of the outcast.
Maybe not this president, but a president.
Yeah. Oh, well. You never know. I mean, your dad likes the outcast.
That's true. And my dad is from Jersey and probably went to the Trump casinos back in the day.
I bet he could get along with Trump.
Yeah, he'd get along with anybody, honestly. Yeah.
So tell me about Annie Leibovitz, like when you kind of like, I don't know if you feel like talking about that at all.
Sure.
Like, because that was kind of gave you your start, right? Like being her assistant.
Working with Annie was amazing. It was, how before you were, maybe before you made a record, and you heard all your favorite records and you were like, this is magic.
Right.
You listen to Lou Reed and you're like, it's magic is what it is, right? I looked at her photographs and thought it was magic. Otherworldly, and so to get to work with her was such an eye-opener to me. It was like, because it wasn't magic, it was hard work. It was certainly talent and an ability to direct people, and someone who was obsessed with her craft. And I saw it, and I was like, I wanted to be Annie Leibovitz, and I finally realized I will never be Annie Leibovitz, and I can only be myself, and I can only take.
Danny Clinch is pretty cool too, though, bro.
It's working for me. It's working for me.
Out,
what years are we talking about?
We're talking about like, I think 87, 88.
Yeah.
Yeah. I went to Ocean County College in New Jersey, probably 83, 84. I graduated in 82 from high school. 83, 84. 85, 86, I went to New England School of Photography in Boston. A lot of good music in Boston. Del Fuegos, O Positive, Rick Berlin, the movie.
Buffalo Tom, are they Boston?
Buffalo Tom's Boston, yeah. And then 87 ish, 87, 88, I worked for like a year with Annie, and it was incredible. I mean, I worked on some really great stuff, including the Tunnel of Love record with Springsteen.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So
in Sandy Hook, we took some photos, and in fact, he was wearing his bolo tie and his like little pleated pants and his cowboy boots and like his sleeves rolled up in a white shirt. And then the stylist is like, oh shit, I need like we need a good belt. Who's got a belt? Anybody got a cowboy belt? And
Danny Clinch.
Danny Clinch got a cowboy belt.
Hell
And I
yeah.
pulled that thing out and I gave it to him. And after 3 days of shooting every which way sideways, the album cover is Bruce standing in front of the car wearing my cowboy belt.
Bro, that's like foreshadowing. That's like manifestation. Like if you think about like symbolically, like you're holding up his pants. I mean, come on.
That is wild. The best analogy that anyone has ever had about that story.
I'll tell
That's
you,
hilarious.
it's because if you interpret, like, sometimes I like to interpret real life like if it was a dream. You know what I mean? Like, how would you interpret the dream? I like if you're sitting at your shrink's office and you say, I had this dream. I gave Bruce my belt. You know, what does it mean? You know? Like, because then look what happened in the end, you know?
Yeah.
In the end,
my pants were falling down.
In the end, you've given him...
had to chase him.
You know, you've given him quite a lot. I mean, and obviously vice versa. That goes, you know, kind of goes without saying.
So grateful.
But the other way, too, for sure. Yeah. You know?
Yeah.
So what did you learn from Annie, though, specifically? Anything specific that you remember? Or just
I do. I remember really the things that I learned from her were really, I think directing, how to direct people but not over direct them. It's like creating like an atmosphere of comfort and letting people feel like they trust you.
Yeah,
that's really what I learned. And then I worked for Stephen Meisel, who's a great fashion photographer.
Okay.
And I worked for Mary Ellen Mark, who's a legendary documentary photographer, master photographer, and I learned something each from them. Like, you know, Stephen Meisel, even though he did a lot of studio work, and his studio thing was like like copped from Richard Avedon, which we all have done, but masterfully, you know, Stephen Meisel. But when he wasn't shooting in the studio, he shot in like really interesting light. He could see natural light really well. And that's what I really love, shooting in natural light. I like moving fast. I don't like have people waiting around. I like to be spontaneous, you know? And so for me, like to see him shooting like on a rooftop when it was almost dark was like unheard of to me. I was like, are you kidding me? And he'd be like shooting these long shutter speeds and like little motion would happen or happy accidents and stuff. And that's what I learned from him that I really loved. And I also worked with a guy named Timothy White, there's a writer named Timothy White. It's not him. It's a photographer who does a lot of celebrity and music portraiture and really has been, you know, created a lot of classic images. But as a friend, as a mentor, like he was one of those people who were like inviting me to meetings with art directors and stylists and like including me in everything, and never had that thing of like, oh no, I don't want you in this room. This is my person.
Wasn't
you know,
threatened.
it was like, no, he was so cool. And to this day, we still, you know, hang out, and I still call on him for advice and whatnot. So, yeah.
What's the difference between like you know, because we live in this era of everybody's a photographer now, you know, and there's even like filters to make things look cool and shit like that.
Yeah.
So what's the difference between like a good photo or a decent photo and something that's like other next level, otherworldly? What do you think? What makes something great to you?
I mean, to me, it's all about the moment. If I had to sacrifice everything, you know, the light or composition or exposure, if it's a great moment, I feel like that's where it lives. Now, and you know, anybody can capture one, you know, if you're you know, and God bless them for it, you know. But if you can consistently have a style and have a vision, like that's when it really, you understand it. And when you can look at someone's work and say like, I think that's a Joseph Arthur painting. I know it. I can see it right there. Right. You know, is it a Danny Clinch photo? Is it an Annie photo? Yeah. You know, that's where it really stands out. And I think that the thing about Instagram, you know, I often say is that as an artist and a photographer and someone who sees light everywhere and composition and people and photos are constantly going on in my head, I'm so blessed to walk down the street, whether it's Asbury Park or New York City or I'm in Berlin or wherever I'm at in my backyard, and I see this beautiful light coming through and like, you know, or just like a shadow or a great moment, you know, and I always felt like I felt bad for people who don't feel that way, right? Well, I think Instagram has allowed people to to actually, probably people who never would have thought they were photographers or never thought that they wanted to see so much, be able to see,
Right.
and see in a different way.
Yeah.
So, it's also about, for me and what I do with musicians, it's about trust and access. So like, somebody can be back there and get a great shot because they're backstage with whoever musician, but like, the real gold is, when you have someone with the right camera and the right eye and the right temperament and trust of the artist to be back there while, Bruce Springsteen's preparing to go on stage on Broadway, or, Patti Smith is shopping for records and has the Coltrane record, or, being back with Pearl Jam or whatever it is,
How did you get involved in taking all these legendary hip hop shots? I was kind of in the right place at the right time. And I think that at the time, photographers like the ones we're talking about, Annie Leibovitz and, the like of, they weren't, it was, I think people thought it was a fad. Hip hop?
And, and so there, it's the early 90s,
right.
Late 80s, early 90s. And, I had gotten an assignment from Spin magazine to photograph third base.
Okay.
And it went really well, and I took those images to Def Jam.
Right.
And said, hey, I got these photos, and they weren't even seeing people. You had to drop your portfolio off, and then they would. And I was like, no, I have these photos of third base. I want to show them. So I went in, and the two guys there was Steve Carr and Say Adams. Right. And Say Adams is like a legendary graffiti artist, and now he's just a legendary artist.
Yeah, I met him at one of your shows. He's cool. I follow him on the Insta.
He's super cool.
He's interesting.
He's a great guy. Anyway, like we hit it off. Say Adams. We hit it off and connected, and like they were like, we were the same age, and they were just starting out. They were kind of excited. They were like, they got this. They were the drawing board. They were just like got this dropped in their lap that they were going to design album covers, and so, they said, well, we like your work. And, they started giving me these little projects, with like Public Enemy and then LL Cool J and like, and MC Search came to me around that time. From third base.
Yeah.
MC Search came to me from third base, and he was like, I have this artist I want you to listen to, and I think your style is just perfect for him. His name is Nasty Nas, and he like gave me the tape, which I wish I still had.
Wow. And
it was a cassette, and I just went in the dark room and cranked it up, and I was like, wow, this is really a cinematic record. And I was like, who is this guy? And he goes, well, let's do this gig, right? So we went out to Queensbridge, and I just shot like a madman, everything around, and it was like, it was so cool. And at that time, I think really a lot of the artists wanted to represent where they were from. It wasn't, there was a little bling going on, but it wasn't, it was about like, I'm from Queensbridge.
Yeah.
I'm from Compton. I'm from, Red Hook and whatnot. And so
my style that with this place.
Yeah.
In a way.
Yeah.
I didn't connect that, but it's the same thing.
Actually, yeah.
In a way.
And so like I just ended up getting all these great gigs, and it was just really exciting. And then I met Shelby Mead, who was a publicist for Elektra Records at the time, and she had Pete Rock and CL Smooth, and she kept telling her boss like, you should hire this guy. He's got it. We could use him. And so I stepped in there, and I started working with the Beastie Boys, and then like I took that work also, and then I was my portfolio at the time was hip hop, a lot of hip hop.
Right.
And then I took it to people like Blind Melon and Perry Farrell and bands like that, and Smashing Pumpkins and stuff at the time, and they saw my work, and they were all, of course, loved hip hop.
Right.
And so they were like, "Oh man, this is cool."
Plus, that's like, talk about credibility.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like
At that point,
at that point, that's
and now, to be honest,
and
the Tupac photo.
Tupac photo.
Like I really,
you gotta flash these up when we.
Yeah, I will.
Yeah.
You mentioned it. Can you tell
the
the story behind that?
Yeah.
One?
You know, I was, it was actually one of my very first assignments for Rolling Stone, and it was really one of the first hip hop stories. I think I'm gonna have to check that. I wonder if it is one of the first hip hop stories for Rolling Stone. It was going to be a quarter page, and in my head, I was shooting the cover.
Right.
I mean, I was shooting the cover of Rolling Stone.
That's right there. Like that right there is important, what you just said. Because if you put that kind of energy into something, then it becomes what that photo became.
Yeah. And, it's like, sadly, he passed away and they did use my photo on the cover.
Wow.
But however, I shot it because in my mind, I was like, if this record is epic and they want to, by the time it runs, you could put him on the cover, would be amazing, right? But it ended up running just a quarter page in the magazine. But they put it when he passed away. They put it on the cover, and it was cool. He showed up, and honestly, he's like, I really wish. And I love the photos I took of him. I really do. But man, I just didn't shoot as much as I normally shoot. Like I'm a madman. When I get someone like that in my studio, I just try and milk it for all I can. Right. And I just remember being like, I got it. This is good photos. And I was nervous. It was Rolling Stone. I had a certain amount of time with them. And I was like, and so, but it's funny. People, I can set people up sometimes with the story and say like, and then this is my photo. And then they go like, what? They're like, you shot that photo?
Yeah, they don't know that you shot that one.
Yeah, Gary Clark Jr. was like, oh my God, I had this poster in my wall when I was a kid. Like, no, you didn't take this photo.
Come on.
I'm like, yeah.
No, it is a crazy photo like that, though. You're like, wait, you took, even just now, I know you took that photo. Even just now. I just saw it in the hallway, and I was like, damn.
It actually, it takes on a life of its own. It almost feels like it is. I think about that great photo of Jimi Hendrix in the like the Sgt. Pepper outfit with the hat, and it's just I look at that photo and I'm like, did somebody actually take that photo?
Right.
Did somebody bring Jimi Hendrix in a studio and he stood there and the guy focused the camera and clicked the it's like wow.
So who instructed Tupac? Did you move him around, or how did that happen?
I ended up doing these portraits at the time. I was doing these portraits with a 4x5 camera, big, large format thing over your head, and it's very deliberate. And I had done so much documenting and quick and snap and spontaneous. I wanted to try to do something a little more controlled. I started doing these portraits, and I have a whole series of them from back then. Cypress Hill, Nas, ODB.
Why'd you want more controlled, or do you just like the look?
I wanted to change it up and do a little something different.
Yeah.
And I really got into it, and very simple, all about the person. And so when he came in, he was really professional. Like he showed up, he was cool. They were pretty much on time. He showed up with one guy when most of the hip hop had a crew, and it was a party.
Yeah.
They'd come into the studio and they would just take it over, which was also fun,
right?
But this was just like he showed up like real pro. Like I think he understood how important it was for his culture and his music and himself, as an actor, and all that. And he just was like really present in the shoot. And at one point he in fact said I was shooting him with this Thug Life jacket. It was really cool, and he was like, hey man. I got some other stuff. How about I swap this out? And I was like, yeah, cool. And he just then he just took off his jacket. He took his shirt off, and I was like, oh, whoa, wait a minute.
Yeah. Oh, whoa.
Hold my beer.
Hang on a second.
Hold my beer. Here you go.
Hold my camera. And I was like, wow, can we get some of the tattoos? And he was like, yeah, man, sure.
And your perfect physique.
And
it
looks like a painting.
Honestly. It's crazy.
And the lighting is
scars. And
yeah. And all the storytelling of his whole life is right on his chest.
Yeah.
So that was a happy accident.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, you find your opportunities where they pop up and you get them. You go for it.
And did you talk to him much? Tupac? Did you get any kind of insight from him or anything like that?
the insight that I got from him that I remember again was his professionalism, and at the time I was doing a Polaroid book, which I don't do any longer, and I do regret it. And maybe I'll pick it up again.
McCready's going to inspire you. He's a Polaroid.
He's a Polaroid maniac. But I do the pull and peel ones, Mm-hmm. And then I would take a Polaroid and I would put it in this little book, like one of those little, drawing books, the little square ones. Polaroid on the side, and then I'd write who it was, and then I would hand it to him after the shoot, and I'd say, hey, would you mind, just signing this for me? You know? And some people would draw pictures, and like Tony Bennett drew my picture on there once. Perfect. It was awesome. Tom York made some cool drawings, and Tupac grabbed the thing and he wrote on there, if a photograph is worth 1,000 words, photographers are worth 1,000,000.
Wow.
And then signed it.
That's sweet.
And I was like,
that's a nice thing.
Oh man. Yeah.
And Nas, you ultimately got his album cover on that one, didn't you?
Oh yeah, I did that one. Of course, the photograph of him was taken by his mom or dad, probably, the child photo. But that whole landscape, and then all the pictures inside are mine, all the stuff in the neighborhood, and also for It Was Written. They kind of did the same thing. They did a portrait I had taken of him. They put it over as an adult, and then I did all that stuff as well. I did Street Disciples as well, and then we did some stuff. Semi-recently, I flew out to London to photograph him for like a Hennessy thing, and he was like, "Yo, who'd have thought you and I would be at the O2?" hanging out, shooting a billboard for Times Square for the Hennessy thing.
Yeah, because he came into a lot of money recently too. Like he made a business move or something.
Yeah, he did that. He's smart. He's smart and cool, and he's been patient. It's like, not everybody is like, super business person like Jay-Z or like somebody like that. And it's like, and you're young and you think you're invincible and you think that the money's going to keep pouring in, and I'm not saying it didn't for him, but I think that some people some people are like, and then there's like, weddings. Then there's marriages that fail, and you're like got this responsibility, and you got kids, and you're like in that middle of like, wow, and then all of a sudden you come out and you're like, shoo. And then you take advantage of your opportunities and make some smart moves as an adult. And he's done that. And, he's always been super cool to me and super modest. And it's the 25th year of Illmatic is right now. And I went to one of the events surrounding it, and he literally put his arm around me and was like, yo man, this is our night. It's not just mine. So, you're sharing in it and stuff like that. That was pretty cool.
That's sweet.
I got to say, that was very, very important to me, that he honored that and stuff. Yeah. So I'm gonna have to look at my I'm gonna probably have to start to roll here.
Thanks for doing this though, Danny, and squeezing us in.
How should we wrap this thing up?
I don't know. I was wanting to talk about the Beastie Boys and Johnny Cash. I couldn't.
I'll tell you a Johnny Cash story.
Okay.
And then I'll tie it into Asbury Park, and then I'll
wrap it.
Yeah. I have been a huge Johnny Cash fan. My mom and my dad love Johnny Cash and Elvis and all those cats. And but my mom's best friend, Linda, my mom's name is Linda, but her friend's name was Linda. The two Lindas love Johnny Cash. And the little Linda, who was my mom's friend, was like, couldn't even say his name without getting all trembly. She just loved Johnny Cash and everything about him. So when he wasn't really happening in the 80s, I would bring him to the Ritz in New York City, or maybe Count Basie, or we'd go see Johnny Cash. And, you could walk into the Ritz and you just walk right to the front because there was hardly anybody there, sadly, right? And Johnny Cash and the Carter family, just a handful of people singing to us, right?
Why was that? Just he would go through
everybody,
divots,
and drugs and changes in the industry and disco and who's Johnny Cash? Who cares?
Right.
But we loved it, right? So we go there and I recall him, singing right to my mom's friend and her just melting into a puddle.
How many people were there?
Probably 400 or something at the Ritz, half of full maybe.
Right.
And And so, we always loved Johnny Cash, and I was working for this magazine, Acoustic Guitar Magazine, and I became friends with the art director and whatnot, and he was like, I got Johnny Cash, I'm going to shoot for a cover, and I was like, dude, hook me up. So I go and I do this session with him, and he was very cool. He was really cool. And we did all these portraits of him with his Takamine, the black one, and did all these photos. It was for the Acoustic Guitar Magazine, and I had my 4x5 camera, and I took a picture of him at one point, and I was so nervous that I didn't pull up the dark slide, so when I pulled the Polaroid, it was black. And I was trying to think of something to like have in common with Johnny Cash, and all I could think of was Annie Leibovitz.
Right.
So I was like, yeah, I worked for Annie, and stuff. And he was like, oh, cool. Like he was a real gentleman.
Right.
And I didn't even have to do that. I could have just been myself and it would have been great,
Right.
And I finally loosened up, but I was real nervous, and I mentioned Annie or whatever. And I was like, and then I took this Polaroid and I peeled it, and I was like, oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to have to take this again. I forgot to pull the dark side. And he goes, okay, Mr. Annie Leibovitz,
that's hysterical.
He totally like gave me the fucking elbow,
Right, which probably loosened everything up.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, okay.
Okay, Mr.
So
Annie Leibovitz.
It was crazy. So I was like, okay.
That's hysterical.
And I took the photos and I did all these portraits, but afterwards I said, can I just hang out while you're, going to the stage and just, document? And I did. And that's when I took that photo of him in the hallway. And he was like just sitting there ready to go on, like, ladies and gentlemen, the Man in Black, right?
Yeah.
And so I took that photo. That became my favorite, even though I have tons of other portraits I've never even really put out that are really awesome. I've come into them, But anyway, so I send that photo to Rick Rubin when Rick resurrected Johnny's career. And I was like, thank you so much. I love Johnny Cash. He means a lot to me and my family. I want you to have this photo. And I had gotten to know Rick through the Beastie Boys, and so he was, grateful that I sent it. When he was doing the second record, Solitary Man, everybody that came through the studio would say, man, if we're calling this Solitary Man, this has got to be the photo.
Right.
And so they end up using it for the packaging.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. And so so fast forward to Asbury Park, right? And I find out that the Berkeley Carteret was at a time you could fact check this, I don't know, but it was co-owned by Johnny Cash and this other guy. And they were partners on it. And Johnny,
what is that? The Berkeley?
The Berkeley Carteret Hotel.
Oh, it's a hotel.
It's right there.
Okay, I see.
And when in the 80s, when he was still having drug issues and stuff, he would come here to dry out, and he would come and he would hang. The Johnny Cash suite is in the upper right suite that looks over the ocean and looks over Asbury Park right over here.
I didn't know that.
And people would see him wandering around Asbury Park in the early mornings when he would come out and take a walk and just try to
dry out,
clear his head and stuff.
Out.
And so now we have this Johnny Cash connection. Yeah. Right here in Asbury Park.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
It's all connected. Is that room called the Johnny Cash Suite still?
It is, yeah.
So if you're addicted to something and you want to come to Asbury Park, stay there.
Stay in the Johnny Cash Suite.
Yeah, that's got to have some mojo.
Get your head right.
It's got to have some mojo. Well, listen, Danny, thanks for squeezing us in.
Yeah,
really a pleasure to hear your stories.
I appreciate it. And I can't believe I'm about to walk into second year of Sea.Hear.Now.
Yeah.
Any minute now.
Congratulations on it.
Thank you.
And where can people find you?
I'll be at the Transparent Clinch Gallery there, the pop-up there. Danny Bone 64 is my Instagram. Yeah. Transparent Gallery Instagram and Facebook. Tangier's Blues Band is where you can find me. And just a big shout out to my partners here, Tim Donnelly, H.M. Woolman, and Tim Sweetwood, and all the artists that are coming out. I'm super excited. I don't know. You and I'll catch up another time.
Do a part
we have a lot more. We have a lot more to
talk
about.
Yeah, we'll definitely do part 2.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Danny.
Thanks, brother. Nice.
Hi, this is Joseph Arthur. Thanks for checking out Come to Where I'm From. Please support us on Patreon, patreon.com/come-to-where-I'm-from. We are an independent podcast, and any contributions you can make are greatly appreciated.